So when I was thinking about, okay, who do we support, I called Anthony, and I said to him, I've come across an organization. I love their story. What's the back story? Like, tell me about them. And he said, ForAfrika, which is the name of this organization, he said they get an A++ on governance, on transparency, and I would give money to them in a heartbeat. So there is an endorsement from probably the top guy in the world, actually, on funding in Africa, Anthony Farr. So with a completely clear conscience, I introduce ForAfrika to you. The story behind this organization is, so it's headed up by Isak Pretorius, who I'm going to introduce to you now. Isak and his wife Terry now run the organization. They are Africa's largest NGO. It's called ForAfrika, and the Africa's got a K. Can we get a ForAfrika? Oh, great, okay. Among other things, ForAfrika feed, get this number in your mind, 3 million children a day. Do you know what the logistics around that is? In, like, I don't know how many countries it is. Isak will tell us the story now, but this is a phenomenal organization. It began 25 years ago when Isak's dad, the late Peter Pretorius, who recently passed away very sadly, Isak's dad was left stranded in a little town in Mozambique. He'd flown in there for whatever reason, a little town called Pambera. And while he was there were complications with the flight to get him out. So he had to stay there for, it was a few days or a week or something. And in the time that he was stranded in Pambera in Mozambique, he watched children die every day around him of starvation. You know, that's happening today. And it completely crushed him. And he came back with this burning heart. He said to Anne, his wife, we've got to do something. Wow. So Peter and Anne's son now have taken over the organization. He is exceptionally well qualified. He's been serving in ForAfrika for 20 years. He advises governments. He advises big corporations on charitable giving and non-profit work. And today, you know, we can make their work more possible by raising a bit of money for them. So I asked Isak if he wouldn't mind flying down to Cape Town, which he's very graciously done. And you know what's amazing is that he's done this at his own expense. Let's pay for his flight and a whole lot more today. We're going to watch a little video on ForAfrika. And then, Isak, you can just come straight up after the video. Thank you for joining us. We so appreciate what you do.
Much has been said about Africa.
I've never seen people in this kind of condition.
Stories that shape the way the world sees us. But most haven't seen the full story that we have to tell. Every day, we see the joy of children drinking clean water for the first time. The relief of a mother feeding her baby the food she needs to help her grow. Every day, we see Africa become. Because together, we are empowering it. People rescued during a natural or man-made disaster. Tools being used in a freshly planted community garden. A generation rising through education, with the nutrition needed to fuel their dreams. All families creating abundant sources of food and livelihood. We dance with entire villages as they create their own destiny. Not everyone can do what we do, but we are Africans, and this is our home. And the future of Africa is unfolding before our eyes. But it won't happen on its own. So together we work, risk, plan, coordinate, build, protect, provide, and love. We are Africans serving Africa. All of us working together to see an Africa that thrives. Our staff rush to assist those in need. New technologies are deployed. Tools are put to good use. Villages are built. Communities are developed. Lives are restored and dreams are awakened. From South Africa to South Sudan, Angola to Mozambique, we are on the front lines. When others go home, we remain. We are up before dawn, in the heat of the day and in the quiet of the village at sunset. See Africa as we do, where the full potential of the most abundant continent on the planet is being realized. Let's write a new story together. We are ForAfrika.
Thank you. I don't need it. I'm good without it, Joe. Thanks. Well, thank you, Steve. You're a rock star. You really are. And I think people have said that in the context of EXP and what you're doing. But the generosity you've shown to us as an organization, the way you've embraced us, the way you've treated us. I often say to people, it's quite cool being in the nonprofit space, because you get to engage with people in a different way. And it tells you so much about the individual. Because many people, when they engage with you, it's kind of like they almost pity you, or they speak down to you. Shame, you couldn't make it in the commercial world, but great that you're working to help people, okay? That's they never say that, but you get that sort of sense. And Steve, you've treated us like a partner, and you've respected and admired what's being done, and I've felt you've given it the same value as you give to anything else, to any of the others in your team, to your EXP business. And so we just really, I want to recognize you for that and tell you how much we appreciate that. Thank you. So ForAfrika, I think our name kind of says what we're all about. Our vision is for Africa to thrive, not for Africa to be reliant on charity, not for Africa to need a bowl of food like you saw in the video, not for Africa to need an emergency response. In fact, I dream that one day our close to 300 staff that we have in the organization no longer provide a single bowl of food, or an emergency shelter, or any other form of sort of charitable, if it's probably the easiest way to describe it, programming. But that actually one day, many of those 3,000 are real estate agents, or accountants, or are selling insurance, okay, or financial services. Why? Because the countries on our continent, the villages that we're in and the people that we serve have been able to progress and grow to the point where that's what they need. And I guess in essence, that's who we are as ForAfrika. We're an organization that believes in our continent. I'm a proud African, okay? Fortunately, I don't have to say this here. And often when I speak in places like the US, I do have to describe that there are actually white Africans as well, okay? But I think this room gets that, okay? But a proud African, believing in our continent. I think we live on the greatest continent on earth. Most incredible opportunities. I personally actually believe that the future history of the world is inextricably linked to the future history of Africa. And if we're not investing in this continent, we're not investing in the world that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will live in one day. And I think it's a decision we have to take really consciously. You say, wow, this now sounds like business, and building economies. Aren't you here to talk about charity? Well, sometimes that's where it starts. You see, often I have people say to me, well, I really love what you do, but you can give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, and you can teach him to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. I always smile and respect the viewpoint, but here's the reality. My life changed in the early 2000s. You see, I had an interesting dad. My dad started the organization together with my mom actually 39 years ago. And as a result of my dad having a life-altering experience. His personal story was that he said, other than finding God, and I encourage you, go chat to Steve at the end of today, okay, because that is the most life-altering experience you can ever have. But he said that other than finding God, his experience in Mozambique changed his life more than anything else. And how it did that was because he witnessed poverty at a level where 300 people starved to death in front of him in the space of 10 days. Just mass trench graves to bury people. Found children wandering around the dead bodies of their parents. Okay, watched children literally starve to death. Okay, and it changed his life. Well, my dad thought that as a youngster, I should have a privileged upbringing, and many people think that's silver spoon. No. It was being put in an aeroplane with him and flown to a refugee camp somewhere in Africa and put to work. And I got to understand and learn about our continent, about how beautiful our people are, about what amazing opportunities there are, about how resilient they are, about the fact that children that have absolutely nothing could smile far faster than I could, and I was actually a kid who had most things. And so I started working with my dad. I went to business school, graduated, started working with my dad. And one of my first jobs was to go and start our programs in South Sudan. He picked an easy spot for me. Middle of their civil war, I lived in a tent for more months than I want to remember, okay, in a place that's called Boma, which I describe Boma like this. I say, picture the middle of nowhere, just for a moment, indulge me here. Close your eyes and picture the middle of nowhere. We all have a different picture, but you have a picture. Well, imagine I could fly you to the middle of nowhere and you got to stop there and meet the people who live in the middle of nowhere. And you ask them to close their eyes and describe the middle of nowhere. The place they would describe to you is Boma, South Sudan, okay? And that's where I was staying in a tent. And we were doing some emergency programs in that area, and we had actually flown in with an aircraft to an area close to there, and aircraft landed, unloaded 6 tons of cargo in the space of about 25 minutes because they only had 30 minutes on the ground, and then they would fly away because it's too dangerous to stay on the ground. They would bomb the airstrips if there were aircraft on them. So the aircraft went, and I stayed, okay? I've got to tell you, your heart kind of sinks when you see the only way out of there disappear, okay? And then people started coming from everywhere. We had another 2 aeroplanes that were coming in. That was the supplies for the community that had been stranded there. And people started coming out of the bush. Well, these were not the people we had planned for. Now, this is a very quick way to lose your life as an aid worker. More desperate people than what you have supply, okay? And so we decided we better go and meet these people where they're coming from and ensure that we can actually separate these 2 groups and try and manage the situation. And so we went out to meet them, and I've always had a real soft spot for children, okay? I'm a sucker for a kid. And so I walked up to a lady who had a young baby with her, and I reached out my arms to take her baby from her. And she gave her baby to me, and as I took the baby, I could feel the baby had a super high temperature and was almost like semi-unconscious. And I took this baby, and as I took this baby, the mother started crying profusely, okay? And I said to her through my interpreter, I said, are you crying because you're worried your child's going to die? Ignorant me, okay? And she looked at me straight in the eye, and she started screaming at me. And what she screamed was, "You don't understand." She said, "I have 3 children. When they attacked our village last night, I can only carry one." And she kept shouting at me, "I can only carry one. I can only carry one." And I looked at this woman, and at first I was so angry with her. I couldn't believe that any parent, I wasn't a parent at the time, okay? I am now. And that's even changed my perception even more. But I looked at this woman, I was so angry. How could any parent choose to let one of their children live while the other 2 died? That's the decision she had made in the last 24 hours. And then I realized that this woman was a greater human being than I'll ever be. Because she had the courage, rather than doing what I would have done and died with 3 children, she had the courage to pick up one and save one at the sacrifice of 2 that she knew would die. Please, God, let none of us ever have to make that decision, okay? But she did it. And I looked at this woman and I realized that she had a unique power. She had the power to believe in the power of one. No matter how desperate the situation, the power of one. One life. See, most of us want to change the world. There's the odd one of you who couldn't care, but most of us actually really want to be world changers. Okay, we want to change the world. Well, I want to tell you how you change the world. You don't change the world by changing the world. You change the world by doing what that mother did. Changing one life at a time. See, when you change one life, you change that life's world. Well, have you not then changed the world for one person? And when you start adding those up over time, you've changed the world, okay? Well, I looked at that woman and I committed to 2 things. I committed that I would honor what she had done, okay? And we did. That child went to a school that we built in that area, got an education, got the nutrition he needed every day. We made sure that that community had clean water. We gave them agricultural development programs. We set them on a journey to be able to thrive. Okay, and I can tell you that in that very area today, we have over 7,000 hectares of commercial agriculture. Okay, so, but I committed to a second thing. I committed that I would spend the rest of my life changing the world one person at a time. Believing in the power of one, okay? You guys are doing the same. I mean, you've had multiple people come and stay on the stage and share how their life has changed and how other people's lives have changed because somebody believed in the power of them, okay? Somebody who had lost it all, okay? And rebuilt their life. Why? Because they believed in themselves. They believed in the power of their one. Okay? So that brings me back to giving fish and teaching to fish. Because here's the reality. Many communities that we have the privilege of partnering with, I don't say serving, I say partnering with, because that's what we do. They're our partners. Okay? Many of those communities right now don't have the luxury of learning how to fish. You see, when the person you're teaching to fish starves to death before they learn how, then not only have we wasted the fishing training money, we've also wasted the life of the person we're training. And so as ForAfrika, when giving a fish is what's required, we'll do that. I hate that we have to do it, but we'll do it. But we'll only do it long enough to ensure that we teach the person how to fish. That's how we go from the beginning of that story to 7,000 hectares of commercial agriculture, where many of the women that we've established in commercial farming have come back to us and said things like, "We've saved enough money now, can you go buy us a tractor?" Okay? So it's beautiful to see how that transformation happens. And that's why I believe that Africa truly can thrive. I think our greatest superpower is our people. And I say that for Africa as well. You say, what makes you say that? That same area of Boma, South Sudan, I had a staff member share with me how when flooding hit that area, she works in the malnutrition clinics all around there. She couldn't access them because you couldn't drive to them. So I said, what did you do? She said, well, I took as many of the supplies as I could, put them on my head, and I walked there. I said, you walked there? She said, yes. I said, well, how far is the walk? Oh, no, 8 hours. Okay. Now, let me tell you, 8 hours in a very dangerous environment. Okay, watch the news tonight. You'll see something about Sudan on there, I'm sure. Okay. She walked 8 hours. She did what she needed to in that clinic, and she walked 8 hours back. And I said to her, I said, what made you do that? And her answer was, you don't leave your children in that condition. That lady is not from that area. That lady is not even South Sudanese, but she's an African, and those are her children, okay? And that's why I say the greatest power we have is our people. African people taking care of African people. African people working in partnership with our own people, okay, and navigating this journey of transformation. And so I want to share one last story with you because I love stories, and I think stories are the best way to talk about what we do. And so I want you to meet Cipriana, is the lady, the mom, and Manuel is her son. Unfortunately, her son's suffering from severe malnutrition. This is a lady who was successful as a farmer, providing for herself, providing for her family just a few years ago. She lives in Angola, in southern Angola. Southern Angola, for those of you who don't know, is suffering the worst drought it's experienced in 60 years. Okay? And so this was a lady who was self-sustained, able to provide for herself, provide for her family. And she unfortunately had to leave her farm. Multiple years of drought, no ability to produce on her farm, left her farm and came into the area where she now lives, which is called Kubal, and to try and find some work, try and find some way to be able to provide for her family. Basically, she lost everything. Not because of anything she did, but because of the fact that drought hit her area so badly, and she doesn't have an irrigated farm. I wish she did, and one day we'll give her one. Okay, we'll help her get one, should I say, not give it to her. But she came into this area, and so she explained this to me. I asked her her story. She told me how she lost her farm. You know what she expressed was her deep desire to be able to actually provide again for her own family. Okay? Not her desire for us to provide for her, but her ability to provide for her own family and the journey to get there. But then she said something to me that literally broke my heart. As she was telling her story, she said, I bring my children. Manuel's one of 3 children she still has. She said, I bring my children in early every evening, and I close the door. She said, because that way they don't have to watch the other children in the community eat. She said, because most days we don't eat anything at the moment. She said, some days we have one meal. That's injustice. If there's any definition, if injustice had a picture, it's on the screen. Okay? And that's why right now we're giving Cipriana and her family a fish. Okay? And we're giving her a fish because of people like you. Because people have said, I'll be a part of that. I'll be for Africa. I'll ensure that I do what I can do to allow us to do what we do so that communities like this are able to stabilize, restore, and thrive. And that's the journey. And that's our commitment to you, is that if you'll support our organization and what we're doing, but more importantly, if you'll be for Africa, it doesn't have to be with us. My first ask of you is that you'll be for Africa. Take care of the people around you, okay? Do something that is contributing towards transformation and change, towards helping people thrive, okay? But our commitment is that if you will help us do what we do, that we will ensure this journey, this continuum from surviving to thriving. We often say what we do is everything from emergency response to economic empowerment. And that is a continuous journey that we want to take people on. And so I appreciate the time today. Steve, thank you again. I appreciate you opening your hearts to hearing from me. And I just want to ask you a couple of things. First, be ForAfrika. It's an amazing continent with incredible people that deserve it, but it's also about the future history of your own family, okay, and the world we live in. The second one that I'll ask you is, if you would commit to loving Africa, and if you want to work with us, then to trusting us, okay? And I give you an undertaking from me. There's a reason that somebody's prepared to walk 8 hours to implement a program and risk their own life, okay? And that's trustworthy. And so I really want to just give you an undertaking from me that you can trust us to do what we say we're going to do, and to ensure that we take communities on this journey. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Right, Isak. Thanks, Isak. Okay, stay up. Fee, can we get that other slide up with the QR code?
I think I clicked one too far. Sorry.
That's okay. We've got some geniuses down there that are going to help us. So, guys, I think a question from me, you may not have an answer, and that's fine. I mean, it's not really necessary, but is there anything in particular that you're working on right now, any projects, any particularly pressing needs that maybe someone who wants to make a donation can help you with? Anything in particular that you want to share?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a difficult question because there's so much that goes on in who we are and what we do. What's happening in Sudan and South Sudan right now is terrifying. Okay, and it is destabilizing many communities that we work in. This year is projected by the UN to be the hungriest year in the history of South Sudan. We know what that means. That means more than 1.8 million people that this year in South Sudan will face the potential of dying from either malnutrition or starvation. And so our responses to South Sudan, we're increasing. In that country alone, we reach 1.1 million people every day. But we need to do more. And we need to be able to deepen what we're doing. And so, supporting those responses is incredibly necessary. But even here at home, South Africa has over 4.2 million children that go to bed every night hungry. It's crazy. 4.2 million children every night go to bed hungry in this country. We can change that. We're totally able to change that. And so I think the QR code that's on your screen will actually take you to our South African donation page. Will contribute towards our South African programs. And we're constantly broadening and deepening those programs. We're in every province in South Africa. We reach over 130,000 people with direct assistance. It's about education. It's about nutrition. It's about economic empowerment and job creation. And so we really appreciate, as South African businesses, that you support South Africa. But I would put South Sudan on the radar screen at somewhere that's in critical
great.
need.
Isak, thank you so much. Give him a round of applause. Thanks for joining us, Isak. Bless you.
Thanks.
If you can't stand while you clap for that man, there's something wrong. Please stand up and clap for that man. Okay, here's what we're going to do. If you have any other phone other than a Huawei, which apparently doesn't do. No, I want the QR code up, Fiona. If we can get it back up, the QR code. You're going to scan that. You just open the camera app on your phone. You point it at there. You'll see it'll identify a QR code. You tap on the QR code. So this event costs lots of money to do an event like this. Okay. the numbers, I've still got to crunch the numbers. We're going to make anywhere between about a 40,000 Rand loss on this event. And I've still got to go and crunch some numbers. And it might be as high as a 40,000 Rand profit. That's the kind of window we're looking at. Either way, I say this is my event. Okay, so I'm making a 40,000 Rand loss on the event or making a 40,000 Rand profit. So I've decided, here's what I'm going to do. Even if I've made a 40,000 Rand loss on the project, I'm going to double my loss. And if I've made a 40,000 Rand profit on the event, I'm giving the 40,000 Rand to ForAfrika. So here's what I'm going to give 40,000 Rand to ForAfrika. Here's what I'm challenging you to do. Even if you can't scan the QR code, there's no excuse. You go to forafrika.org/ZA/donate. Here's what I'm challenging every person in this room to do now. Give a multiple of 4. If you can give 40 Rand, I tested it this morning, you can donate 40 Rand on that page on their website. Donate 40 Rand. If you can do 400 Rand, do 400 Rand. If you can do 4,000, do 4,000. If you can do 40,000, do 40,000. So, Lindsay, I wonder if we can have a little bit of music. I want us to have a 3 to 5 minute little time now where you get to think about it. Maybe you talk to your spouse. If you're with your spouse, make a donation to ForAfrika now, please. Then maybe there's someone who wants to come and talk to Isak about South Sudan and doing something specific for that. You're welcome to then connect with Isak personally afterwards. So we're going to take a sort of 3 to 5 minute break, and then we're going to hand over to Rory Dyer, which is going to be incredible.